rules are set up for wealthy people to allow other wealthy people to stay wealthy. They are business credit and a limited liability company. If companies weren't uh, limited liability, if you were personally liable for everything, there would be so many fewer companies and much less people willing to take the risk of starting a business. And they certainly would be much less willing to take the risk of taking on a business loan if you knew that you were personally liable and that you would owe that for the rest of your life and there would be no loan forgiveness. But because those things exist, it allows a system for people to utilize that to become very wealthy, and it allows the wealthy to stay wealthy and not worry too much about if their business fails. There's a certain former president who I think ran 4 companies into bankruptcy, does not care, able to get more loans, one of the best salesmen of all time, just able to get funding from that company, puts it into his new company, gets loans into his new company. He can talk bankers into getting him money forever, knows how to play the game, and has been on record talking about that it is just a game. And he played that game into the presidency. And it's the same with all the other players, you know, the Jeff Bezos, the Bill Gates, the Steve Jobs, they all took on corporate debt. Apple, at the height of its earnings, when it's $1 trillion company, during the pandemic, I think they took around 30 billion in corporate debt because interest rates were cheap. Why not get a bank to create $30 billion for you when you're paying? They're probably locked in at some, 2% or 1% because interest rates were so cheap during the pandemic, or before the rate hikes, right? So why not take 30 billion, 40 billion, 50 billion if you can get it and you're locked in at a rate of 1% or 2%, right? As long as Apple exists, they're going to be able to pay back 2%. Even though they're a $1 trillion company and they have, I don't know, hundreds of billions in cash from what I've heard. They're a very cash rich company. They're still going to get 30, 40 billion because they don't have to go earn it from people and struggle and strive for 2, 3 years of profit to get that money, to pay all the operators, to pay the business tax, and all these different things when they can just get someone to create it for them. Literally put it in their business bank account, create it in their business bank account for them, and all they have to pay for that is 1 or 2% a year. Much easier than going to run the company for 2 or 3 years and take that out as profit from revenue after taxes. So when you're wealthy enough, banks will create $100 million for your corporation with you not even having to be liable for a single penny. And this is how the true players play the game. And those funds are just sitting there in their business bank account. Their business bank account is not that much different from their personal accounts because they're able to draw whatever salary they want out of that. They're able to take whatever dividend they want out of that after, of course, paying taxes. So it's very similar to a consumption-based loan for $100 million, except they're not liable for it. And they're obviously not going to use it for consumption. They are going to use that to buy more clients, more customers, more revenue, and they're going to pay it back at these historically low interest rates. So understand this, that inflation is not a cause, it's an effect. All a yearly inflationary or inflation statistic means is that prices have gone up. It's just, if you're looking at the 2022 inflation rate, which I think is 15%, if you're looking at trueflation, what that means is that just that we're looking back and observing prices for these particular goods and services went up 15%. They are a basket of goods that represents the economy. Therefore, goods and services in general went up 15%. If you look at inflation in housing or equities, it's actually probably higher because you might not know, but inflation applies to not just goods and services, but every asset. But if you're looking at the general economy, you're using the basket of goods, 15% applies to the whole economy. All that means is just we look back and prices went up. That's it. Inflation is an effect. The cause for the prices going up is, you guessed it, more debt. So the banks loan out more money, give more money to people to stimulate the economy. People spend more money. The Fed loans more money to the Treasury. Treasury cuts everyone a stimulus check. What do people do with the money? Do they invest in a business? Do they invest in inflation-proof assets? No, they take the money and they buy stuff on Amazon. They buy Netflix. They buy Oreos. They buy consumer goods. And the prices for all those things go up. Why? Because retailers see a market increase in demand, and therefore they raise prices in accordance with that. They also raise prices in accordance with their monitoring inflation. They're seeing the cost of goods go up. Therefore, their employees need to spend more to pay for their lifestyle. Therefore, they need to pay their employees more. Therefore, they need to raise their prices. And in a lot of those cases, these large companies that we're talking about, they benefited from that because Amazon, Netflix, these are large companies. They know how to play the game. They got corporate debt, public debt in the form of company bonds, and they're playing the game very well, and they benefit also from the inflationary system when all this money's created in debt and people buy more Amazon, more Netflix. In fact, most of these companies would fail if it wasn't an inflationary system. That's how well they're playing the game. That's how far to the edge they're playing the game. So that's the actual cause of inflation. More money being loaned out either by the Fed to the government, who then loans it to the citizens in the form of bonds, or commercial banks. To further understand, check out how GDP actually works. GDP is outright counterproductive to the well-being of a citizen. Despite GDP being the leading metric of a healthy economy, GDP, again, like inflation, just measures the total revenue of goods and services sold in the economy. That just means prices for goods and services are going up because we have to pay those prices, right? And unless we're getting a bunch of foreign investment, which can be the case, more goods are sold, more goods and services are sold because foreign investments coming in buying them. Therefore, we're bringing money into the economy that didn't exist. We're taking it out of foreign countries, making our country richer. I'm using it as American as an example. I'm Canadian and I live in Southeast Asia, but just as an example, if you're an American, money's coming in, we're taking money from other countries, goods are going up, services are going up. That's, somewhat beneficial to the country, right? To the citizen, in some cases, yes, because it benefits the economy, but his goods and services are still going up. But if his income isn't going up in proportion or beyond that, he's actually losing. But the majority of the price of goods and services going up is inflation. Studies show that 40% of the current prices are, based on this inflationary system, right? And so GDP is a measurement of all the goods and services. That should be going down for citizens' well-being to go up. He should be able to buy more goods and services each year than he did the year before. He should be celebrating GDP going down. Now, it's not that as black and white in that, because if there's a massive drop in GDP, it's usually because there was a war or a depression or some economic collapse. There are, as I said, foreign investment or economic collapse scenarios that can affect GDP, and it's not good. But I'm saying, as a general principle, the citizen should be able to, in an ideal system, which the fiat system is not for the average citizen, but it can be for you, he should be able to buy buy more goods and services for the same amount of money. If he's worth $10,000 in 2022, by 2023 he should be able to buy more toilet paper and more TVs for the same amount of money. That would mean his net worth is appreciating over time, or it should at the least be able to buy the same amount of goods. But even if it's able to buy the same amount of goods, if there's just a 0% inflation, goods should still be getting cheaper because there's been such an exponential increase in technology through, logistics and shipping and companies like Amazon, that if we didn't live in an inflation-based system, the price of toilet paper and all these things that are sold on Amazon would be so much cheaper. It would have been going down steadily for the last 20 or 30 years, due to the rapid increases in technology. The same with, food. Like food used to have to be shipped, you know, 3 months, from another country into America in because they didn't have it in that season, right? Now it's can be flown over on, ultra fast ships or planes, or they're able to build trees that would grow that type of food locally. There's been so many advances that in a perfect system for the average citizen, the price of goods would have been going drastically down every year as technology has gone exponentially upwards. So, as I said, without the inflationary based system, which is 40% of prices, direct result of credit expansion, which gives normal people more money to spend because they're constantly being loaned personal consumption loans, right? Or they're getting money from the government in the form of welfare, in the form of, or increasing welfare, stimulus checks, soon to be UBI, and therefore they buy more Oreos, they buy more NFTs, they buy more Amazon, and they buy more mortgages. A mortgage is not an asset, that is a liability that you are personally liable for. It is a property that you own 10% of and the bank owns 90% and charges you interest, and you can't make any money on it. It could only be considered an asset if you either own the entirety of it, or if you own, let's say, 10 or 20 or 30% of rental property and you were able to pay off the interest with rent, plus earning something on top of that, plus owning an asset that keeps pace with inflation that you will eventually pay off by someone else's money, with them paying for the asset, not you, and done through a business corporation where you're not liable. So that is a business, and that is taking a corporate debt, and that is a business loan. And guys like Grant Cardone have played that game to the maximum and done very well with it. That is not a personal loan for a mortgage, which is usually not a good deal unless you are just, a wealthy person already. You've got everything tied up in your business. You could easily pay for it, but you choose to just keep it in the business and just use the home to build your personal credit. And, you don't want to rent because you don't want to, have to deal with a landlord or whatever.